There are so many reasons why I started this, but I guess the most important reason is when I was a teenager, I did some charity work in Peru as well as the Philippines. And in Peru, we helped build a school for autistic children. During the lunch hours, we provided food for the school children, their families, and the staff. And it was really cool. I had limited Spanish, they had limited English. We did have a translator, but if you know me, I try to be very encouraging and inspiring. So when I was talking to all these kids as they waited in line for the food, I would say something along the lines of, you could be whatever you want to be. You can be a lawyer, a doctor, an astronaut, an engineer, whatever you want to be. And all the kids loved it. They ate it up, and I kept doing it. Then towards the end, I said that same spiel, like you could be whatever you want to be, a doctor, lawyer, whatever, to this one kid. And he kind of just looks up at me. He laughs, smiles, and says, "I'm just hungry." And it kind of hurt, but I get it, right? He just didn't want to hear this whole motivational thing. He was just trying to eat. So I didn't necessarily forget about it, but it was always in the back of my mind until the next year. The next year I went to the Philippines, and we were serving food to homeless families. And it was the same kind of deal. They're all in a line. I was saying, hey, you can be whatever you want to be, and everyone loved it. But halfway through, there's this one kid. This time he didn't smile. He actually said to me, "I don't care about any of that stuff. My situation will never change. It's always been like this." That's when I realized, how can he care? How can he care about the next 1, 2, 5, 10, 20 years? How can he wait to be successful when he still is worried about his next meal? When he's worried about tomorrow? Literal life and death. So I made it a point at that moment that no child around me would ever starve. So how we've been trying to make a difference is we subscribe to Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Anyone who's ever taken a psychology class has probably seen this pyramid. And anyone who knows me knows that one of my core philosophies is becoming the best version of myself. And one of the core philosophies of AZA Essentials is becoming the best version of yourself to then help others become the best versions of themselves. If you look at the top of the pyramid, it says self-actualization. Many cultures call it something else. Buddhism calls it enlightenment. Christianity calls it becoming more like Christ. Western society calls it pinnacle. And now they're calling it manifesting the best version of you. But the point is, to get to that high spot, that high level of self-actualization, or even any of the ones below it, you can never stay on that level unless you satisfy the previous levels. You can never skip a level, and if you do, it's very briefly, and then you'll always go back to the other level where you have to maintain the levels below it. And if you see the bottom level, it's physiological needs. That's food, shelter, and water. The essentials of life. We don't have the resources or the funds yet to provide more than the essentials. But what we've been doing is we work with different communities, and each community is totally different. So for example, we work with U46 and CPS, which is Chicago Public Schools. Those are the two largest school districts in the entire state of Illinois. There are thousands of kids that can't afford basic school supplies or backpacks. And what tends to happen is they act out, they steal, or they just don't care. So for the last 3 years, we've provided hundreds of backpacks and school supplies. But that's one community. Another community could be homeless people. And in Illinois, they have to be worried about the winter. so they need cold weather gear. So for the last 3 years, we've provided them with winter fleece gloves, winter fleece caps, hand warmers, tents, blankets, propane tanks, things that they need to survive in the winter. So what we do is we go to different communities, we assess whatever their needs are, and then we provide them with the essentials. And if you look at our logo, it's pretty funny because it's AZA Essentials. And my last name is Azarius. So most people think it's Azarius Essentials, and it's not. It's great because it works out. But when you think about other corporations or these large organizations, and I'm not trying to hate on anyone, but the reality is, especially in disaster relief areas, these corporations go in to help, and they do help. But the problem is, the communities that they're serving end up becoming so dependent on them. So when they leave, that community ends up being more damaged than before they got help. If you look at our logo, we start a project from A to completion. A to Z. And then we go to the next project. But we always circle back to the previous project to make sure that they're still good. And then it's a perpetual cycle. That's why it's an infinity sign. And that's the meaning behind our logo.